Ah, pork. So ugly yet so delicious. You can get pork ribs, barbecued pork, pulled pork, pork chops, you can even get the whole pig. But did you know the #1 place in the world to get all the pork you want is in Washington, D.C.? But you won't find it at any trendy uptown restaurant, but you will find it at the United States Capitol. And that kind of pork, of course, is when politicians try and stuff legislative bills at the last minute with projects lobbyists spend tons of cash on in the hopes of sneaking it through unnoticed until after the bill has passed. Well, Boeing has been busy selling quite a bit of pork lately on Capitol Hill in the form of a deadline extension for changes to their uncertified sister jets, the MAX 7 and 10. But sadly for Boeing, that pig won't fly because U.S. lawmakers this week declined to add an extension to an annual defense bill of a looming December 22nd deadline that would impose a new safety standard for modern cockpit alerts for 2 new versions of Boeing's best-selling 737 MAX aircraft. And as you may recall, Boeing CEO David Calhoun threatened to cancel the MAX 10 if they couldn't get that much-needed deadline extension. Well, December 2022 is nearly half over and Boeing is running out of time and options, as it appears that Congress has pushed all their chips in. And now Boeing is forced with a decision to call or fold. Literally, as in folding up the MAX 10 for good, or going all in and spending money they don't have to actually comply with the new law. I've got the details. Next on Maximus. Greetings everybody, Maximus here. Even though Boeing lost one of their last best chances in having their extension removed from the defense spending bill, Congress and lobbyists are working feverishly on granting Boeing an extension. But if Congress doesn't force Boeing to retrofit new safety upgrades on their Boeing 737 MAX fleets, which now seems unlikely, Europe's aviation regulator EASA still intends to mandate the upgrades for the Boeing MAX in Europe. According to Dominic Gates in the Seattle Times, EASA's Janet Northcote said in an email last week that Boeing has committed to make these upgrades available for retrofit. Northcote added that the actual retrofit of the in-service fleet can be achieved by different means, including possibly mandatory action from the FAA or EASA. But back in Washington last week, Washington's Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell proposed an amendment that would require all U.S. airlines to retrofit their aircraft safety standards as a condition of allowing Boeing extra time to certify the MAX 7 and 10 models. But regardless of what the U.S. decides, it's a real possibility that European airlines will have to meet a higher safety standard than those in the U.S. When EASA approved the MAX to return to service in January of 2021, it tacked on a condition that the FAA had not required. To get the MAX back in service in Europe, Boeing agreed with EASA to develop 2 major safety upgrades for the MAX 10. Then within a few years afterward, it would also be retrofitted onto the in-service fleet of MAX 8 and 9 jets in Europe. The first upgrade is to add a third angle of attack sensor. It was an inaccurate reading of the angle of attack sensor that triggered the series of system failures that caused the 2 MAX crashes. The MAX presently has only 2 physical angle of attack sensors, unlike Airbus, which has 3. This upgrade adds a virtual cross-check of that measure calculated by the flight computer from a variety of other sensors and inputs. The second retrofit requirement is for a switch that would enable the pilot to silence an erroneous stick shaker alarm. Also in the 2 previous MAX crashes, it was a continuous false alarm stick shaker that was one major distraction for the pilots throughout the 2 crashed MAX flights. Both upgrades are currently being flight tested on the MAX 10, which Boeing says will not complete certification until the end of next year or early in 2024. But what makes this a politically touchy moment for Boeing is a deadline inserted into the Aircraft Certification, Safety, and Accountability Act of 2020 that requires all planes certified after the end of this year to have a crew alerting system compliant with all the latest safety standards. Since the 737 crew alerting system has been grandfathered in multiple times over the decades, the 737 MAX does not comply. So with certification of the MAX 7 and MAX 10 delayed into next year, unless Congress extends or removes that deadline, Those jets can't be approved to fly passengers without a major design change. But some in Congress, including both Republicans and Democrats, are ready to relax the rule for Boeing and extend the deadline with no strings attached. According to two sources on Capitol Hill, Rep. Jim Clyburn, a Democrat from South Carolina, a leading Democrat in the U.S. House, favors granting Boeing an extension. Likewise, Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz, who will become the ranking Republican on the Senate Commerce Committee in the next Congress, was quoted by the Wall Street Journal saying it makes sense to grant Boeing a reprieve. But Oregon Democrat Representative Peter DeFazio, who currently chairs the U.S. House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, is opposed to changing the deadline, but he has retired from Congress and his term ends in January. However, Missouri Republican Sam Graves, who will take over the retiring DeFazio's committee in January, supports granting Boeing an extension. But if Congress manages to pass a no-strings-attached extension for Boeing, it's also possible that the MAX 10 upgrades could be dealt with separately at a future date. However, when all is said and done, faced with the prospect of more stringent European safety rules applying to airlines than U.S. carriers, either Congress or the FAA or both might just be embarrassed enough to be forced into finally mandating the retrofits. So is anybody else confused? I have never seen so many people try so hard not to improve aviation safety than the FAA and the American government. But as of the recording of this video, Boeing is running out of time, and Dave Calhoun is going to have to put up or shut up and either comply with the new law or scrap the Boeing MAX 10 altogether. Who am I kidding? Deadlines in the U.S. Congress are as useless as screen doors on a submarine. They never get met and they get pushed around like tumbleweeds in the Arizona desert. However, this time it won't be that easy, especially if Europe is still going to demand Boeing makes the changes they promised. Then, as I said, the U.S. will be embarrassed into forcing Boeing into making the changes. Now, let the Maximus is a Boeing hater comments commence. And while that's going on, the rest of you can let me know what you think. Will the U.S. extend Boeing's deadline, or should they? Please be sure to let me know down below. Well, that's going to wrap it up for now. And as always, thank you for taking the time to stop by Maximus Aviation. And if you think I've earned it, I'd love it if you would subscribe, like, share, and ring the bell. And remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.